Hello,
He's Oliver,
she's Lucy,
and you're listening to Anyway Movies,
the podcast of film fanatics and movie maniacs.
the podcast of discussions, debates, and occasional distractions as we talk about all things cinema.
If you like what you hear, be sure to like our Facebook page and follow us on podcasting platforms.
Big shout out to my sister Molly for creating the logo and images for our podcast. Give her a follow on Instagram at _Molly_Joanne_.
Now that's all out of the way, dim the lights, turn the projector on, and let's start the episode.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Anyway Movies.
Well, I'm very excited about this one.
I know. We need to start thinking of something else to say because every single episode has started with one of us saying, "Oh, I'm excited for this one."
I am ecstatic for the episode of which we are about to speak on.
That's better. So today we are going to be talking about quite possibly one of the most famous stories in the world, and that is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Roald Dahl. At the moment, it has had 2 very popular movie adaptations and one prequel coming up starring Timothée Chalamet. So, obviously, we're not going to be reviewing that because that's not made yet. But before we start, I know this is a spontaneous question, but what do you think about a prequel of Willy Wonka being made?
I'm cautiously optimistic because it's going to be a prequel of the 1971 film, which I genuinely love. I like Timothée Chalamet, so I'm excited. I like the casting, and I think it will be good. But we've seen a version of Willy Wonka's life before the Chocolate Factory done, and I personally didn't like it. So yeah, cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same wavelength. I love Timothée Chalamet. I think he's an absolutely incredible actor. I am not 100% sure about his stance as Willy Wonka. Obviously, I can't comment on that yet, seeing as he hasn't played the part yet. He might be amazing. I might be proven wrong. But I don't know. I like the idea of there being a prequel, but at the same time, I kind of wish they'd left the story alone. I think if Roald Dahl wanted Willy Wonka's story to be told, he would have written it. I think the whole thing that I like about Willy Wonka's character is the fact that he's so mysterious and you never know what he's thinking. And I
Yeah,
kind of don't want to know what his story was before he started the Chocolate Factory. But then again, I am kind of intrigued, I'm not gonna lie. It's kind of a mixed bag.
yeah. I mean, you don't have to watch it if you don't want to.
But you see, if it's out there, I may as well. I probably am because I love Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the story anyway. So anything that I can get out of it, I will probably watch, even if it is awful. So I guess we'll see what happens with that.
I guess we will.
So obviously there is not going to be any spoiler alerts because both of these films have been out for a very long while.
If you don't know the story, then you must have either been born yesterday or spent your life living under a rock.
But if you haven't watched either, then please watch them. They're really good.
So, shall we get started on the first film then?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, so the first film we're going to be talking about is the 1971 version, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, starring Gene Wilder as Willy Wonka himself.
So this is a film that I have loved more as I grew up because as a child, I'm sorry to admit, I thought it was very boring. I didn't like it. Sorry. But as I've got older,
It's fine, you had no taste.
I
Fine.
know, I have zero taste. But as I've got older, I have definitely appreciated a lot more, and I like it now. I think it's amazing. I do think that June Wilder is the best Wonka, the
Hands down.
best, the best. So you just can't top him, honestly. And there's just like a charm to it, a nice nostalgic tinge, even though I wasn't born in the 70s. But it just looks very of its time
Yeah.
and just sweet. It's sweet.
I love this film so much. This is definitely my favorite film adaptation. I feel like it has that sort of, classic movie musical film feel from those kind of musicals that were
Mm,
coming out at the time, because they just don't make them like that anymore,
they
which is
don't.
sad. Not that modern day musicals are bad, because some of them are really good, but just they've lost something that these films had.
You can't not have that is the first thing you think of when you think about this film.
Oh yeah.
The songs are just everything about this film. I think it's the one thing that everybody takes with them. And also the opening title sequence is ingrained into my memory.
I love the characterization and like the songs, the theme and the style and the feel and the time a lot better than the 2005 version did. Having
Mm-hmm.
said that, I do prefer the Oompa Loompa songs in the 2005 version because Oompa Loompa Doopa Dee Da after a while gets a touch annoying. But yeah, what about you?
Yeah, I love the songs in this version. I think they are really lovely. I love actually the songs before the factory. So I've got a golden ticket, cheer up Charlie, the Candyman. I love that song. Yeah, those bits before the factory I actually do love. I definitely understand your point about oompa oompa. It's like just shut up, we get it. The kids are dead. Um but Pure Imagination is just iconic. Just these flashes of chocolate being made and putting like biscuit wafers into the machines and just the whole thing is just so good. I really don't understand why. I mean, actually, I do understand why I thought it was boring when I was a child because I grew up liking the 2005 version. So, any other adaptation, I was like, no, 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 this is wrong. But now, yeah, I definitely see where people are coming from. I definitely understand the arguments of those who do prefer this version. I still prefer the 2005 version,
Like I
but
said, no taste.
I know. Be quiet. We've gone through this. We've been through this, Oliver. I just think
I'm,
the old one just has a really like charming quality to it that I didn't see as a kid, but I do
yeah.
now.
So then what about the 2005 version? What is it about that that sticks out to you more than the 1971 version?
The colour, and I get that Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory was 1971, so you didn't have the effects that they had in 2005. I completely understand that. But are we really going to sit here and say that the 1971 Sweet Room is better than the 2005 Sweet Room? Are we
I
really
mean,
going to sit here and say that the 1971 inventory room is better than the 2005 inventory room? I don't think
honest,
we are.
honestly, I think they are. In the 1971 version, every room is different, but they all feel like they're connected and they're part of the same factory. For especially for its time, it was just so magical, especially like the sweet room.
Yeah.
There was just something quite creative and magical and spontaneous. And maybe it's just because I grew up loving that version more. So when I watched the 2005 version, I just saw it as like a copy and a rehash of something I already preferred. The 2005 factory just seemed very detached. It seemed very cold and colorless a lot of the time to me. Like the separate rooms were okay, but like the hallways were always dark and sort of eerie and creepy. The fact that there was a squirrel room instead of the golden goose room was just wrong.
But
I'm
squirrels
sorry.
is what was used in the book.
Yeah, but that room did not match the feel of the film. Like it just felt so cold and dark and very Tim Burton-esque. And in my opinion, it just didn't work.
I mean, one thing that I can say about 1971 is that it definitely has a better tunnel scene.
Oh, definitely.
Nightmares, anybody?
But it was one of those things where like it scared me, but then when I went back to watch it, I couldn't not look away.
Yeah. Is that chicken getting beheaded for me? How was that allowed in a kids' film?
It's 1971.
It was 1971. I mean, I think at the end of the day, we can all just put all of this down to the days it was made, because
Yeah.
I think it's unfair to make a comparison. Obviously, 2005 effects are going to be better than 1971 effects. It just is. There's no going around that. I do get your point that the Chocolate Factory 1971 feels interconnected. It feels like a factory rather than separate rooms. I do actually agree with that. I think it's just a matter of taste. I just prefer the look of the 2005 factory more. For me, there was more colour, there was more identity to each room, there was more of a visual aspect to it that I really liked. It was just bright and eccentric and very Wonka, whereas 1971 for me just kind of felt like a chocolate museum rather than a factory. I,
Okay.
so another thing that I maybe wanted to talk about the 1971 version is the cast.
Okay, yeah.
What did you think of the cast as a whole?
Gene Wilder as Willy Wonka, like we've said, perfectly casted. Definitely the
Yeah,
better one, in our opinions. I do prefer Jack Albertson as Grandpa Joe.
yeah, yeah. I can see that.
What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I love the 1971 cast so much. I think both versions were very lucky with child actors,
Oh, yeah, definitely.
because I think child actors sometimes get a little bit of a reputation that they're not very good. And in some cases, they're not. And that's not me, bashing child actors. It's just a fact. Just like any other adult actor might be crap. Um,
Yeah,
but there's more of a background with childhood actors and stuff like that, and I don't think it's nice, I don't think it's fair, but there is. But I think with the Charlie and Chocolate Factory adaptations, I think every single child, and I'm not joking, every single child is very good in their role. There isn't one child that I think was a bit off, or isn't getting what the director wants them to do down, because I think that you can blame the characterization more on the writer rather than the actor, because at the end of the day, it is the writer and the director that has control of that. The
yeah,
actor's job is just to do what's written on the script. An actor can maybe play the role as they want to, but if that isn't what it is in the script, then they won't be hired. That's just how it works. So I think, judging from what has been written and what has been interpreted, I think every single child does a very good job. I do have to admit, I prefer the parents in the new version, but I think that's because they just get more to do.
yeah.
The parents in 1971 just sort of, Except for Veruca's dad, he gets quite a bit to do, and he is very funny. But
Yes.
the other parents kind of just are there, if you know what I mean. And that's not their fault. It's just, as I said before, the way they were written, that's how it was in the script. But I think the new version did a very good thing of not only having the kids being, reckless and all of this, but the parents also having this sort of nature to them that you can understand why the kid was acting that way. It's kind of like seeing the same person, but as adult and as child. And I really love that. Whereas I think with the old version, the parents are too nice to have such bratty kids.
Weirdly enough, there are there are versions of the characters I prefer in the 2005 version of the film to the 1971, but as a whole, I did really like the 1971 cast. I mean, I feel like the one that really works well is the relationship between Veruca and her dad, just because he's such like a people pleaser and he wants to let his daughter have all the things she wants. So
Yeah.
it him being genuinely really sweet and caring towards her and only focusing on her, and then for her to become very spoiled and bratty and demanding because he just keeps fueling it.
Yeah, but I think the 1971 version got so lucky with the casting.
Yes.
I don't think there is a weak link that I can think of. I think everyone is pretty much great on the most part, and I just love how the kids are kids.
Yeah.
I know that sounds like a very obvious statement, but they're written like kids. Sometimes they let kids use certain words that kids would not use.
Oh yeah.
I feel like 1971 gets a very good depiction of children in that era, and I think it really works and makes me hate them even more, except for Charlie, who's an angel, obviously. But then, even then, Charlie in the 1971 version is a little bit selfish. I mean, he does have that line when he's there, like, I want it more than any of them. But I kind of like that. I like the fact that Charlie isn't this pristine Jesus child rained down from the heavens, because at the end of the day he is an 11 or 12-year-old boy. He's not fully grown yet. He hasn't matured. So of course, when this whole golden ticket thing comes out, he's going to be just as greedy as the other kids that are trying to get it. But the only difference that Charlie has to everybody else is he has no money to do so. I think that Charlie and the Chocolate Factory would be such a different story if Charlie wasn't poor. And I think that was the point that Roald Dahl was trying to make with his book. That, even it doesn't matter what sort of background you come from, as long as you keep a level head and are good and kind to everybody, you get what you want. And that is exactly what Willy Wonka says at the end, which I think is a great way to close off that film. It is a great last sequence, by the way. I definitely prefer that ending.
Do you prefer the glass elevator?
Design wise, I prefer the 1971 version because there's actual like, golden casing. But I think, and this is going to sound really stupid, I think the 2005 version looks more like an elevator.
Yeah, it does.
And I also love all of the buttons on it. And I love the way that that's how they travel through the factory. And I kind of find it a little bit eerie that there was no way that 5 families were going to fit in that elevator.
It's like he knew. He knew that all the kids were going to die, and he
It's
knew all
like
the
he
parents would
knew.
follow them.
Yeah, no.
Well, isn't that like a theory or something that he tricked these families into coming because he wanted to take away their kids?
Well, there is that argument for the 1971 version too, because when they all get on the boat, there's no seat for Augustus Gloop or his mom. So I guess you could argue that he
So
sort of foresaw this coming.
it's like in the 1971 version when like Augustus Gloop gets stuck up the tube and he's just there, really not really caring, or when Violet Beauregard balloons And all he said was, "I told you not to chew the gum. I told you not to chew the gum." No one ever listens. Like you didn't really try, did you, sir?
I just love Gene Wilder's sarcasm with the stop, no, please come back. But yeah, 1971 is definitely one that I have grown to appreciate more. And I completely understand why you love it more than the 2005 version. Right, okay, so the 2005 Charlie and the Chocolate Factory was directed by Tim Burton. And it was the first film I went to see at the cinema.
That's nice.
Yeah, I remember it so vividly. I remember being very scared of the squirrel bit where she
Oh,
goes down the chute. I don't know
don't.
why I was scared of that. I think it was her scream or something. I didn't really like it.
The part when she's literally being held down by the squirrels is nightmare fuel.
It
And then they
really
just
is.
and then
I
they
mean,
just carry her away.
those squirrels have some strength. Let me tell you.
I mean, she's like a 10-year-old girl, and there was like 100 squirrels.
Mental. Yeah, I remember being very scared at that part. But on the whole, I really enjoyed it. And I have watched it at least 4 times a year since then. It is one of my favorite films of all time. It doesn't make my top 5 or anything. It's one of those favorites that I just like watching it. It's just a lovely, comforting film for me to watch, even though it's creepy as heck. Yeah, there's just lovely memories that come with it. And yeah, I try to watch it every Easter, but if I don't, I've probably watched it about 500 times that year anyway to make up for it. So I think I can quote this film from start to finish without any problems. I just love it. I'm kind of obsessed.
I mean, it's not a bad film by any means, I don't think. And there are definitely elements to it that I do genuinely love and prefer to the original. Like I've already said, the songs that the Oompa Loompas sing in this version are so good. My personal favorite is the Violet Beauregarde song. And that is why we work so hard to save Miss Violet Beauregarde. Do 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 do. Like it's a vibe.
It really is. I just love almost every single song in this film. We're not going to talk about the puppets. We're just not. We're not going to do that to ourselves.
Well, now I
But
want to.
no, I'm going to proper call her out here. My sister Molly was terrified of those puppets when she was little. When we first watched them, and they set on fire, she could not handle it. She was scarred for life, poor girl. And say this was 2005, so she must have been 3 when this came out. So imagine a 3-year-old watching talking puppets being caught on fire. It's not a good look.
I think the original was sort of had an eeriness to it, but on the whole it felt quite fanciful.
Yeah.
Version had a lot more of the darkness to it up front.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, there are so many things that I love about this film that I just prefer. And it has nothing to do with how much the 1971 film has impacted me. I still like the 1971 film. But I think with this being my first trip to the cinema and this being my most watched, I think even if 1971's version was better, I probably still would prefer this one. Just basic nostalgia reasons, really. And I know that that isn't very film critic of me, but it just is. It's just the feeling that I get when I watch this version, I don't get when I watch the 1971 version. And I think it's all to do with that, in all honesty.
There is a lot that goes on in this version of the film.
For sure. I don't like every one of the decisions, I have to say. Like, not This film is not perfect. I completely get that. There are people who absolutely despise this film, and I kind of get it. I understand why they don't like it, but it's for some of those reasons that I do like it though, so it's kind of hard. I do agree that Willy Wonka should not have had a backstory.
Yeah.
It wasn't needed. Why name the film Charlie and the Chocolate Factory if you're just going to focus on Willy Wonka? This one might as well have been called Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, in hindsight, it's better to say that, but that is just what I think. And I think it was just an excuse to put Christopher Lee in. I
Yeah.
mean, he was great in the film, I have to admit. He was very stern and scary and, very, very good in his role. But I just don't think the Willy Wonka backstory was needed. I really don't. It didn't add anything. It's like I said at the very beginning of the podcast. I like the fact that Willy Wonka is mysterious. You have no idea what's going on in his head. You don't know what that man has been through. You don't know what he has done to get to where he is. And you don't know his secrets to his success. That is what I like about him. And I don't like the fact that we were told the reasons why, because it just wasn't needed. We didn't need to know that. Surely it would make his character more mysterious if we didn't know any of his past. That's what makes a mysterious character mysterious.
Also, the way it was sort of caught within the film, so like one of the kids or the parents would say something triggering to him, and then he would just sort of have a moment where he would space out, and it would just be a flashback, and then it would just cut back, and it would just be the kids going, "Are you okay?"
Yeah, it started getting a little bit old.
It didn't work. It just didn't work.
It kind of had first draft feel. Like, oh, how am
Yeah,
I going to insert a flashback in here? Oh, I know. Let's have one of the kids say something, and then let's put a weird swirly image and magical music. Like, that's something that happens in a childhood TV show. And I get that this is a children's film. That is probably what they were going for in their defense. But yeah, I completely agree with you on that. It did not work for me at all. Still doesn't. Even now, those bits I just sort of like switch off. I'm like, no, Timothy Chalamet is going to tell us the real story now, Burton.
the reason why I feel good about this prequel is because it's gonna show him, like the movie is gonna be about him before the factory and how he got there. Also, we've been told, and so the idea that it's going to be focusing on that I think will be a lot better.
Well, I'm hoping with a 2-hour film, it might be. Whereas I think Challenge Chocolate Factory 2005 was trying to be 2 films in one sometimes.
Yeah. See, I'm personally not the biggest fan of Johnny Depp's Willy Wonka.
Right? Okay.
There are moments that I do like when they're in the garden and he says, "And you can eat anything, but not me, because that would be cannibalism, children." I liked those moments, but as a whole, he seems so detached, and so it was quite jarring.
The quotes in this film, I have mentioned before that this is the most quoted film in my house. We
Yeah,
quote this film all the time, without a shadow of a doubt. There will always be at least one quote of this film in this house, and I kind of love it. Like I say, I can quote this film from beginning to end without any doubt.
I was just gonna say maybe we should have a podcast episode where it's just you read from memory.
You know what? I'll be more than up for that. I'll be more than up for that because it is genuinely so hilarious. But this is something I wanted to raise. So this Easter, they showed Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the 2005 version, on TV. This was a version we had not seen before. So every single version we've seen has obviously been our DVD copy, which I think is the UK version. But the version we saw on TV was the American version. And all the way through, it was exactly the same things. But because I know this film inside out so well, I could tell that something was off because they had certain bits where there would be an extra line thrown in there. And I am here to tell you that the UK version missed such an amazing scene in which it's the bit where they're all walking towards the suite room, and it's just after Augustus has just said to Charlie, "Do you want some chocolate?" And he goes, "Sure." And he says, "Oh well, you should have bought some." And then in this American version, it cuts to Mike TV's dad and Veruca Salt's dad, and Mike TV's dad says, "Is it just me, or does Willy Wonka seem he's a few cents short of a buck?" And then Veruca Salt's dad says, "I'm sorry, I don't speak American." I laughed so hard, mainly because I'd never seen that scene before, so it took me off guard and by surprise. But also, we had missed out on that interaction between the two parents, because apart from that, there are no parent interactions in the whole film, and that was the only one. I feel like the UK missed out, Oliver.
Well, that's a shame.
Oh, but yeah, I really like that little bit, but we don't have it on my DVD cover, so I probably will never see it again. So sad times.
Sad times indeed. I'm sure you'll be able to find a clip of it on YouTube or something.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think it's like a deleted scene or something. But yeah, kind of caught me off guard that. No. I mean, I do love the parents in this version. I think they're cast so well. Everyone just does an amazing job in this film. I think the kids are amazing. And I think a special mention has to go to Jordan Fry as Mike TV. So I am one of these annoying film watchers that I like seeing the people in the background. So the people who are, front stage and center, I do pay attention to, but I mostly like to see the reactions of the people in the back. And Jordan Fry's Mike TV has the best expressions. I kid you not. If you watch the 2005 Chocolate Factory again, everything that happens, just try and look for Mike TV in the background. He pulls the best faces. It's amazing. Especially the bit with Veruca Salt with the squirrels, because he's just sort of leaning on the gate like, I know what's gonna happen. I know what's gonna happen to this girl.
That scene just gives me the shivers. I'm sorry.
Oh, it does. It does. No.
Cast wise, I prefer Jordan Fry's Mike TV, and I also prefer Freddie Highmore's Charlie Bucket to the original.
Right. This is where we disagree.
Really?
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. Freddie Highmore is very good in this film, and I do like his Charlie, but I just feel like Peter Ostrom's Charlie was more childlike. He was more of a child. I think Freddie Highmore's Charlie was too nice and bland. I
I
mean, argue your case. I could be proven wrong here.
I mean, no, I totally understand where you're coming from. I do feel like in the original, the children felt more like children, whereas
Mm-hmm.
in this one, you've already said it. I feel like there were elements of writing children how you think children are. But for me, it might just be because this came out in 2005. So it came out whilst I was like 5 or 6 years old. I wasn't that much younger than Charlie in this movie. And so I feel like I could relate to him more because he was a kid who was a couple of years older than me at the same time that I was a kid. Whereas in the 1971 version, though I do really like it, I never really connect myself to that Charlie.
Yeah, no, I do
Mm,
love Freddie Highmore's Charlie. I think he more than holds his own with such an
yes.
incredible cast.
I mean, it's
Um,
Freddie Highmore.
yeah, I mean, I know that he worked with Johnny Depp before on Finding Neverland, but with everybody else, like it's very easy for a child actor to kind of lose their way in a sea of such accomplished actors,
Yes.
and I think he holds his own. I think he's very good. He is a good Charlie. I'm not, slating him whatsoever, but I think writing wise, I think Peter Ostrom's Charlie was written better. That obviously isn't Freddie Highmore's fault. But I do understand the arguments there. But yeah, on the whole, the cast of 2005's is just so good. I love everybody in it. Again, no weak link. I kind of like the omission of Slughorn. Slugworth. This isn't Harry Potter, Lucy. Shut up. Yeah, I didn't miss Slugworth in this version, and I'm quite glad. I don't think he was needed for the story, so I understand why they cut him out. So yeah, I didn't really miss Slugworth that much, which is good.
Yeah, I have to agree. In all honesty, I don't think I even remembered he was in it whilst I was watching it the first time.
I mean, he obviously had a lot to do in the old one, but that was just because Willy Wonka was testing the kids. So you could understand his purpose for that story. But I
Yeah.
think in this version, Johnny Depp's Willy Wonka is just not smart enough to come up with that sort of plan. So it was understood. Yeah, I just love the vibrant of it, like the vibrancy. I love the music. I've already talked about the music in a previous episode, so I won't go too into that. But the music is just incredible, and yeah, there's just something very fairy tale about it, even though it is quite dark. It is, I
Yeah.
think, darker than the first one. I mean, I know that Roald Dahl didn't like the 1971 version because he thought it was too whimsical. So I definitely think that he might have preferred the 2005 version if he had been alive. It does have the darker things from the book in it, and I think they play off each other very well. But that's what you get when you have Tim Burton as director. He is always going to get the dark messages. He's going to make them come to life in a very, very good way. And yeah, I just love this version. It's just very, very special to me, actually. It's quite, and again, even if 1971's version is better, I probably still would prefer this version because it is just so different and just has a different quirk that I quite like for the story as well.
I think both movies have some really strong points, and I think we both have our one that's special to us. We both have the one that we grew up with more and are attached to more. And I like how we were able to see both the good and the bad in both of them.
Mm.
And it's just always nice to talk these things out. I've enjoyed doing these comparing episodes versus Alice in Wonderland and now this.
Yeah, we should do more. And if anyone's listening right now, if you've got this far, well done. If you do have any ideas for us, like for comparison episodes, me and Oliver would be more than happy to do them because I think these have been my favourite ones to record, actually.
They have been fun.
So if you want that and more episodes, we do have a Facebook page, so go and like that. And we are also on every single podcasting platform that you can think of, including Spotify, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Breaker, Radio Public, and Anchor. And you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel as well.
Please let us know what you thought about today's episode. Let us know which Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory you prefer, which Charlie and the Chocolate Factory you prefer. Oh, having the same film with two different names, it gets confusing at times.
I know. It makes me wonder what they're going to call the prequel.
I think it's just been called Wonka.
Boring.
What would you call it? The prequel of Wonka and his. Wait, no, I was going to say something really wrong there.
Somehow I don't really want to know what you were about to say. We'll see you next week on that note.
See you next week.